Blog Talk Radio.
Happy National Winnie the Pooh Day. Uh-oh. See, that music went with that.
Yeah, really.
It's January 18th, 2018, and welcome to Big Blend Radio's third Friday Family History Show, streaming live from a sunny, blue sky, beautiful day in Tucson, Arizona. I'm Lisa Smith.
And I'm Nancy Reed.
Together, we are the crazy mother-daughter travel team and publishers of two digital interactive publications. We have Big Blend Radio and TV magazine that covers a little bit of everything. It's our Viva Variety publication. It covers food and history, nature, art, music,
all that good
travel,
stuff.
all kinds of good stuff. And also we have Parks and Travel magazine, and that covers just that, Parks and Travel. You can see them both at our main website, which is bigblendmagazines.com. That will link you to everything, including our Big Blend radio shows. So today's show, it's our third Friday Family History Show. That means Holly is back on the show. Miss Holly T. Hansen, the Gen Teacher. She is a genealogist and president of Family History Expos, and she's joining us today to share tips on researching military family history and using military records, historic military records, to help you with your family research. So a lot of good stuff coming up on the show. And Holly, she runs familyhistoryexpos.com. If you go to her website, you'll also see her. She's got videos, I think 11 different videos, tutorials to help you with your family research in regards to military records. And she's also co-author of Beginning Military History Research, so you can get that book on there as well. And she also has an article on military history research on blendradioandtv.com, along with other articles. And this article will also be featured in the spring issue of Big Blend Radio and TV magazine that will be out in a couple of weeks, well, less than that. So February 1st is when it's out. Hey, Holly, how are you, Miss Gen Teacher?
Hey, I'm happy. So happy to be here. Thank you so much.
I love that you always answer, how are you? I'm happy. I love that. I've never had a person like every time we talk to him is like, I'm happy. I think that's awesome. Because, it's interesting. Today, didn't you have a class right before this online? You have like your Ask the Pros class. Didn't you do that with Arlene Eagle today?
Yes, we did. We talked about court records today, and it was awesome. Really great class.
Oh, wow. So this is something you do every Friday?
Every Friday, Thursday or Friday. We usually Thursday evenings or Friday mornings, and we have a section on our website that's called Ask the Pros Questions and Answer, and people submit questions through that link. They have to sign up for a free membership on our website, and so we don't let spiders and robots get in there. But if you're a real person and you sign up, you can ask questions, and then we answer them.
So can Priscilla, our sock monkey, ask a question?
I guess if you typed it for her and logged in for her.
But that's really cool.
I had a sock monkey when I was a little girl. My great-grandmother made it for me, and it was brown. Yeah. But I don't have it anymore. I wore it out. I'm really sad. Wow. We could have had a party with Priscilla and Michael, my sock monkey, that if he was still around, but he's gone.
Well, next time we see you, you'll see just how many family members. Well, we call it the monkey gang because she has a gang. She has like her own group of family, and we've got Flying Fabio who flies, and he's a little flying sock monkey. He actually got shot out of a cannon in Fort Bowie National Historic Site. And he doesn't really squeak anymore because of that. But when he landed, anyway, almost landed in the ruins. We have Dottie, Disco Dottie. She's like a little Christmas ornament. We have Pinot Pony. Anyway, it goes on. And we have
the twins.
Mr. Pete.
Yes.
So we have the twins.
We could have Michael, my sock monkey, be the family history mascot because he's dead and passed on, but we don't forget him.
Oh my gosh.
Him be,
okay, so we're going to do a sock monkey
experience.
family history show, Sock Monkeys.
But they do have a history of, I think they started in just after World War II, because people didn't really have a lot of money, and they made socks into monkeys for their kids for Christmas and things like that. So there's a bit of heritage to them, I think.
Mhm. Yeah.
And they did start out
I think
brown.
my great-grandma made one for all of us cousins. There's 27 of us. Probably some of them still have theirs. I wore mine out, but I didn't know that someday I was going to grow up and wish I'd kept good care of it.
Wow. So we touched on military history there. We went off tangent on monkeys, but we did touch on military history since this is a World War II thing. So I'm going to get us back on track here. So military history is so fascinating because I know, I was actually watching a friend, she was posting things the other day on Facebook going, okay, there's this, insignia on a hat, on a, military hat. What is this, Navy? Is this Army? Is it that? And then you start to, trace back who it was, where did they serve, all of this, history, but that's like someone in your family. And then your article I'm reading going, it's not just, your relatives that served in the military or ancestors. It could be using military records from wars and things like that to figure out your family history, whether or not they served, right?
Right, that's right.
Okay, that's
a
lot
of
I was
people
thinking.
who served in the military. Let's just talk about the Revolutionary War, the American Revolution. There were many, men who fought in that, and when the pensions were awarded by Congress, they had to apply, just like you do today. You have to fill out paperwork, and they had their neighbors write testimonials. I know this guy. He's honest. We lived together when we lived here, and we moved there, and we lived here, and we moved there. And they give the history of where they lived from the time they were in the military or before until they're old and filing. And they have to have several of those. And so you'll get these. Sometimes it's a mate that was their mate during the military, and they served in the same regiment. But sometimes it's just someone who wasn't in the military, and you don't know until you look. So if you're doing family history work and you don't have any evidence that your ancestor was in the military, find out who his friends and neighbors were, are they, and look for them, because your ancestor could have very well written an affidavit or a document saying the value of this person, their honesty and integrity, that they served and that they know about it. They saw their scars. They tell all kinds of interesting things. There's one military record that a lady sent in a mole to prove that they were married, because her husband had killed this mole and sent it to her from the military camp. And we've got an article on that on our blog.
Oh, wow.
About a marriage record and you could prove it because of this military record.
Wow. I mean, we were watching the TV show This Is Us, and in that show, one of the characters is looking for his family history through his dad. His dad's brother served together in Vietnam, and now it's getting really interesting because we don't know if the brother's really dead, and he was tracing things just over his necklace, seeing the necklace that his dad gave him through some photos, and he saw this necklace with somebody else, and then he starts interviewing all these people that served with him. And it's really interesting when you think people who serve together will know this history. Do authors work in regards to the same way, like military historians? I know Mike Gordy is on our show all the time, and he follows in the generals' footsteps. I mean, he really documents these generals and interviews the families. Do authors utilize this kind of research for their characters if they're doing a historic novel or something?
If they're good ones, they do. I have a friend. When I was the editor of Everton's Genealogical Helper magazine for many years, when DNA first started coming out, nobody wanted to really touch it. And I said, hey, I think that's going to be really helpful to family history. Let's do it. And Megan Smoleniak had submitted an article, and I accepted that. And the first time she ever wrote about DNA, she now works for the government, identifying remains through DNA and reuniting soldiers with their families. And just today she posted one that after 70 years, she was able to bring the remains of a soldier home and reunite it with a daughter who had never met her father.
Wow.
He died 70 years ago. So it's fascinating, and there's so many things, that could you imagine identifying 70 years later? Who would have ever thought that would be possible?
Exactly. Wow. So this is big. You did Ask the Pros today on court records, right? In the military, I just remember people getting court-martialed. So it's almost like a different system when it comes to police and things like that. So when you do court records and military research, does it change if somebody, did something naughty or went AWOL or something, got court-martialed or ended up in a thing with the military police? Does that change for when you're doing?
The brig.
Yeah. Does that change up versus
it's research?
Civilians?
It's just a different set of records. You have your county court, your state court, you have military courts, you have naval courts, and so you just have to know where to look, and that is in and of itself a hard research project sometimes to find the right court records. Today in our court case that we talked about, we had on the list in the handout was 125 different types of cases, and that's just in your county courts.
Wow.
That doesn't have anything to do with all the other, the federal system or the state system, or it's layers, and it's quite interesting.
Are these records going to be online, or do you have to physically go somewhere?
Both. Some of them are online. For example, there's a website called fold3.com, and they've had a big push to get all of the War of 1812 records digitized, and they've got a huge part. I think they've got Q to Z left on the pensions for the War of 1812, and so a lot of that, it's coming online all the time. Many of the Civil War records, there's the national parks. This could go in the parks. I'll have to send you the link, but they have a place that you can do searches for Civil War soldiers, and it's available online. You can go to the National Park Service at those battlegrounds and do searches for your family.
Wow.
I hadn't thought about that previously, or I would have had that information really ready for you. This things pop into my mind as we talk because there's just so many things to know. And
because when you're saying the Revolutionary War too, I remember when we were in Louisiana, we went to it's on the historic registry, this graveyard cemetery. It's an American cemetery, Bayou Rapides. It's outside Alexandria, and the Civil War took place there, and so the Revolutionary War, and they had a famous Revolutionary soldier that went into another battle. Remember who I'm talking about, Nancy? There was this legend attached to it, and we'll have to re-air the interview we did at some point because I need to re-air it so I can re-listen to it because this was a few years ago. But seeing a grave from a Revolutionary soldier, and it was a different, it's different. And Louisiana graveyards are always different because of the water issues, but. It to me it was like, wow, okay, so when you go, cemeteries could be part of the military research too, right? Is finding their graves and then going from there.
Right. I just pulled up the Soldiers and Sailors database for the Civil War. The Civil War Soldiers and Sailors System is a database containing information about men who served in the Union and Confederate armies during the Civil War, and it's available through nps.gov. And I'll send that to you, and you can add the link so people can go and look at that. You can add the link, but it's npc.gov/Civil War/Soldiers and Sailors database.htm. But if you just put soldiers and sailors in a Google search, you'll be able to pull it right up.
Wow.
And you can search,
cool.
You can browse it, and there's stories, and it's available in several of the parks. Quite cool, very cool. National Park Service.
Wow. So the park, it always ties back to the parks, Holly.
Well, I tell you that too. That's your mission, is to find these cool things, because the family history is so tied to the parks in this country and other places. It really, really is. and it just goes hand in hand, hand in glove. I mean, it's just so perfect.
I want to just, for audiences that have never joined Big Blend Radio, Nancy and I are about to be on the road full-time once again in our life. How many times? This is fourth time?
Yeah.
In the different countries, but second time in the States. The first one, we went on for 3 years, and we needed to come back and do some revamping and production work. And we're going to be on the road full-time now. And our quest, it started as a quest to visit and document every single unit within the National Park Service. And we have about 418 units, and that includes trails and seashores and byways and all kinds of things, monuments, historic sites, battlefields, not just, the grand places like Yellowstone and Yosemite. But now we are going to document. Our quest is to visit and cover every single American park that we can. And we may jump overseas, too, because why not? We have friends in England, and Holly's going to England, so she's got to report back. She's going to go hang out with Glenn Burrows over at Norfolk Tours there. But what we're doing is documenting that and telling the stories of the communities, telling the stories of people, and a lot of our partners have sent us on specific mission quests, like we need to go get these kinds of stories, and Holly has sent us on family history stories, and apparently we're going to whenever I'm looking at all, like this article talking about military research, it just seems like everywhere you turn is a source for family history research, and so going, not just our national parks, but that seems to be a well of information, but it could be graveyards, it could be libraries. Do we get to go on military bases and see, men in uniform? I just want to ask.
You should. You absolutely. When you go to Kansas, there's a military base there. The cemeteries are amazing on those places. We have some really amazing national park cemeteries, not just in D.C., but Nebraska and Kansas. We have Leavenworth. Leavenworth is famous for the federal penitentiary, but right there in Leavenworth there is a military area as well. And I've been on there, and I've walked through the cemetery, and I don't know how many headstones, just row after row after row of young soldiers. And there's one in Nebraska that I've been to just out of North Platte. You better go see some of that good stuff.
Wow. So you talk about also in the military records in your article, you talk about known war deadlifts. So what's that?
Well, that's similar to the Soldiers and Sailors database. There's a list of those that we know died. We have it for Vietnam. We have all the wars. And there's not just one go-to place. You have to kind of figure it out. The Daughters of the American Revolution, they have collected information on the military of soldiers and officers in the American Revolution, and they honor them, and they do all kinds of special things. And it's a lineage society. If you can prove that you descend from a Revolutionary War soldier or someone who contributed to the war, you can be a member. And they do all kinds of service projects and nice things for the communities that they live in. There's Sons of the American Revolution. And they collect these names. Colonial Dames is another one for those colonial ancestors in the war times of the colonies.
What about military records in regards to hospital records? That's got to be really helpful with that. Because there's so many medical things that
there are hospitals are a little bit different. Sometimes they're owned by the government, but sometimes they're private, or they turn someone's home or library into a hospital some place, and the records are private of the doctors, and so those are a little more tricky because you have to track down who owns those records today. Is it in a historical society? Is that facility still functioning? Are the records available? Are they private? There's a lot of laws of privacy that protect kinds of records that you don't have as easy access to.
Okay. And then what about, thinking this the other day, because they have like the general store, like the mercantile, right? Like when they were settling the West, like Tombstone, here's the old mercantile, right? And people used to go in and, get things on, not trade necessarily, but credit, and all those
on
stores.
A tab.
I know, have a tab.
Mm-hmm.
Does that ever come to, I don't know if that happens with, military supplies. I mean, I don't know, maybe the depots have it because they have those commissaries and stuff. So, I mean, it's probably the same kind of deal.
I'm sure it does. In Kentucky, if you're doing research in Kentucky, early Kentucky,
yes.
you have to find the forts. That is where everyone went to trade. That's where the military were. Those people were, and they have records, but they're private records, just like a trading post. The man who owned it have the records. But you have to understand how the fort system was set up to know where to look, and many of those have been identified.
Yeah,
and it's still research. We're still finding them.
Mhm. And it's interesting. I think what's always interesting is how we moved across, and that changed the military structure too because of how we set up forts across our country. Because there was the skirmishes between our cavalry and the Native Americans, and it just everybody started to move west and set up these different sites. And what's interesting to me is a lot of the forts, nothing really happened. They set up the forts and nothing happened. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like in at Fort Churchill up in Nevada, nothing really happened there after a while. It became like a post for the Pony Express and things, but they thought they needed it because of the Pyramid Lake Wars just up north from them, up near Reno area.
Well, it just depends on what happened with the Native Americans in that area. Some of them left.
Well,
some were trained out.
But I think they got drunk or something. Some of the men, the cavalry, got drunk, and it's another story of somebody kidnapping someone or taking a woman, and then that caused drama. Remember that there's that story too, and then
I believe some of the military, a couple of the men kidnapped a
woman.
couple of young
women,
teenage Indian women, and it went bad from there.
Yeah. I think that's what started the Pyramid Lake Wars. Yeah, and so Fort Churchill was set up from there. But going to these ruins, it's interesting because some of the Park Service, like if it's a mission, like Tumacacri, they do this restoration work. Tumacacri down here near Tucson, and I know they're doing it in San Xavier del Bac as well. There's this consistent restoration work of the missions. But some of the ruins, like at Fort Churchill, that's it. They don't mess with the ruins because as soon as they do it, they're going to lose the ruins. But the ruins are kind of going with time. And so I just want to encourage people to go see the ruins now because you're not going to be there for very long, It's really, really hard to protect adobe. Some of the way adobe bricks were made, and it's not very consistent. So some last for, a couple 100, 300 years. Others not so much. So
I've seen there in Arizona, some of the parks have built shelters over top of them to try to protect them and do
like
what they can.
Casa Grande runs they have. They've done that over the big house, the Great House. Holly, the other thing too is what about, I was just thinking about, military is just such a broad term, right? Because there's so many different roles, so many, Navy, Air, all of that. Like the Tuskegee Airmen, there's the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, and so and the Buffalo Soldiers. So there's a lot of African American history, Native Americans, and Navajo code talkers. So when you look at military history, don't we get into that too? And because that was some big changes in how America.
Yeah. And there have been books. There have been great books written about them. And when you read military histories from great historians, one of the things you want to watch really carefully are the footnotes, because they will, in their footnotes or endnotes, they'll tell you where they got information, but manuscript collections that no one even knows exist. That's one of the things I do as I begin a tough research project or a subject that I'm super interested in. I find a good history written by a historian, and how I judge that is the foreword, the front matter. What do they tell you about? And their footnotes, if they have good lots of footnotes and say exactly where they got their records from, and indexes. Those are really important to me as I use works. If somebody's written a great book, but you don't have access to any of the material without reading every single page, it's very difficult to use it as a resource for research, for entertainment, to read, fine, but being able to go back and find exactly some military person had written their view of a battle, and it's in their family or it's been put into a museum, and they tell you exactly where they found it, and you can go find it yourself. It's very cool. It's like I have a military journal of the war with Mexico. My grandfather, Andrew Jackson Shoup, was he was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and they had been driven out of Nauvoo, and they were out there on the plains, and the president sent some people and said, hey, we're in this big war and we need some help. It was a real strange time where they had been driven out and the government didn't protect them, but now the whole country's in trouble. And they just said, okay, we'll go. And they signed up, and they had what was called the Mormon Battalion because they had enough men to fill a battalion. They were all Mormons or members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And he kept a journal day by day.
Wow. Did
you know
did you know when you were in Yuma, did you have a chance to go see the statue for the Mormon Battalion?
I did not go see that. I didn't.
It's on the.
I've seen a lot. I have seen a lot of them, and I've gone the trail. I took my mother several years ago because this is her great grandfather, and I took her on the trail, and we.
Oh wow.
We took the journal and we read it and went along, and we'd read the journal. Here we are driving in a car, and I'm thinking we went the same time period that he was actually walking, and I said, how they wear wool suits. How did they not die? We've got air conditioning.
Oh my gosh!
And it's really astounding what the human body can really handle. We just don't have an idea.
I agree.
That's a fun thing. But I made that journal available. I donated it to the LDS Church archives, and so anybody in the world that wants access to it could get it because it was just held in my hands. It was a private thing, and no one else could ever see it. And I photocopied it and transcribed it and sold it as a book, too, for people who wanted a copy so they could see the actual handwriting versus we typed it up so that you could, and we indexed it so that you could, if your ancestor was in the battalion, you might have been mentioned by my ancestor. And so I love history so much, and I love sharing that with others.
We'll have to send you a photo.
No, but this is going to be your next story, right?
Well, every time we have our meeting, every time we have our radio show, I tell you about another ancestor that
I know. But
I don't pre-think it. It just comes up.
Yeah. Well, we ended up, we did the Butterfield stage route with, Glenn. We're always doing the English connection, and lo and behold, the Butterfield stage route. John Butterfield comes from England, so his family does, I should say. But also, the Butterfield stage route goes on the Mormon Trail, the Mormon Battalion Trail. And it right there, we were at the petroglyphs. I'll send you those. But I'm saying that your next family history feature from Nancy and I, our Love Your Parks tour story, is going to be that story in Yuma because that was also part of the armed forces, and because of Yuma being a depot, a military depot, the Colorado River State Historic Park is just incredible with that kind of history. And they tell the story of the river. They tell the story of, Teddy Roosevelt going in there and really changing how irrigation worked. But the military history in Yuma still stands today, and also because of the skies and the air history. And so that's your next family history feature is going to be this statue, because Nancy and I have visited this statue so many times, and I've photographed every part of the plaque, every write-up, and I've been itching to do something with it.
His name will be on there.
Yeah,
his name will be on there. Andrew Jackson Shoup. His father, Peter, fought in the War of 1812 and named his first son after the president, Andrew Jackson, who was a revered military leader at that time. Now, people have all kinds of emotions about Andrew Jackson today, but
Yes.
Yeah.
In my heritage, he was a wonderful military leader, and our grandfather named his son after him, and that has been handed down every generation. We still have Andrew Jackson's Shoops in the family today. That they still hand that name down. Each generation gives it to their.
It's amazing to me because, the Battle of New Orleans, what he did was absolutely incredible and united everyone, right? He united everyone against the British. And then even the Native Americans, and then what he did to the Native Americans afterwards, it's like, dude, how could you go from that to that? What was that? But his real, that battle and how he set it up, he reminded me of Shaka Zulu.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing, military research. Now, this can take you overseas because, the British came over, so, and there was all the wars, with with us and the Brits, and, so there's all kinds of international military research to do too.
Yeah, I have another fun little story about a military ancestor of my husband. His name was it's going to fly out of my mind. Conrad Crump. Conrad Crump. Oh. His name was Conrad Crump. But rather than taking you backward through the records, I'll start with where he actually began. He was born in what we know today as Germany, but he was hired by the princes as a Hessian soldier and sold to fight for the British Army against the war in the colonies. So he was Conrad Cram, Konrad, Cram, Kram. He was sold to fight for Great Britain. He came to America. He fought in the war and was taken as a prisoner of war by George Washington's troops. And those prisoners were offered land if they would give an oath of allegiance and fight for the patriot cause. They would be given land because they didn't have any money to pay him. And these Hessian troops are like, there's no land. This isn't even my war. It's Great Britain. I'll take land. And so they took the oath and they fought. Well, Conrad, when he came to Great Britain, they changed his name to Conrad Crump. So it was a trick to figure out who he was for a while because that's such an English name with C's. They changed it from K's to C's and put the Crump, which is a very English name.
Yeah.
But he was then taken as he was fighting for the patriot cause. He was taken as a prisoner of war by the British and was labeled as a deserter and was put on a ship out in the Sound, and he escaped and eventually got his land and settled in North Carolina. And he stayed there for generations until the LDS missionaries found one of his descendants and they joined the church and came to Utah. So that's how I met my husband is because of that. But isn't that a fascinating story? He was a soldier for the German Hessian troops. And then he fought for Great Britain, and he defected and became a patriot and was taken as a prisoner of war. And
wow, and
put
that's
in a
crazy.
court martial and all that for desertion.
Wow. What about women in the military history side of things too? Because women, have played roles. There's been, there's
nurses.
that one woman that pretended to be a man and served. There's all kinds of stories, and there's nurses, but then there's a laundry. I always think that's interesting when you go to the ruins, like forts, and here's the laundry section, and
right.
Yeah, and it's just like, okay, that's what a lot of times women or
that was acceptable activity during the war. Nurses and laundresses to be a foot soldier. No, you had to sneak in those early times. It was. And there were women that do it, but they're isolated cases. That's not a norm. We don't see very many of those. But when we learn about them, they're fascinating. Just like the story I told before about this woman who got on a log and floated across the river to hear the enemy troops. I mean, she wasn't a soldier, but she saved the community by what she did. And so we see that interaction of women. They played a huge part in it. But even in World War II, and a lot of the women joined up to be nurses to go over there. They went all around the world to do this.
I think they did a lot of harboring of soldiers different wars and different times, and they helped a lot of soldiers who were wounded or somehow got separated from their troops. They ended up, some woman has a little farm, and they would take them in and bandage them up and feed them, and they had a lot to do with the Underground Railroad too.
Yeah, they did. There's always been compassion. War is so awful. It's terrible, the things when you get this. I'll put out as a warning: when you get into military research, you can plan to have your heart broken. It is tough. Some of the things that these people go through and experience, and you hear these veterans who don't want to talk about it. It's because it's so tough.
It's awful.
But
I bet letters are the way.
Side. Yeah,
letters.
The story of a slave woman who went. Her master was taken as a prisoner during the Revolution. And he was a small guy. He was just a small guy. She was a big woman. And she went in there and said, went in with this basket full of clothing and said, I brought clothes for my master, and he was a prisoner. Well, they let her in there, and she put him in the basket and put clothes over top of him and walked out with that basket on her head, and he escaped. This is a true story. And, there's a book that's
so
called The Hero of Hornet's Nest that was put out by the state of Georgia. And it's in that book. It's no kidding. The stories are incredible what these women would do. But she went and saved him because it was going to be worse. What was happening by the military was worse.
Yeah, really must have been little, and she must have been really strong.
It's a crack up. When I read that,
how
I thought,
would you lift a basket with a man in it and put it on your head?
And carry him out. That's what she did.
Speaking of women in baskets, there's a woman in the basket that went down Niagara Falls. It's true.
I know, aren't they? Yeah, well, baskets are amazing things.
I'm just saying. That's a whole new conversation,
Okay.
Well, but it is fascinating to me because you see stories of women and how instrumental they were in so many parts of the war, and then there's the letters between people that I think are really interesting. And sometimes I think sometimes the soldiers wouldn't tell everybody just how bad it was in those letters, depending. They would be trying to comfort family.
Well, don't forget the letters are looked at and marked out, or what they call it redacted, so that military secrets don't leak out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
So you'd get a letter maybe with half of it blacked out.
We see them today, and there's 90% is black lines, and you can see it was.
Yeah. Oh wow. Wow.
Yeah. I think in some of those early wars, though, those boys, they sent their letters. I don't think they got as censored. We didn't have.
They knew how to sneak things out.
We didn't have access to everything like today. Everything's digital, and you can, but to get a letter off to someone, they're. Yeah,
somebody would be at the front lines and be texting
with with family letters that are fabulous to really give you that a nice slice of what was going on at the time.
Wow, I think this is just so fascinating because there's just so many. Look how many wars have been fought.
My father
have we learned anything yet?
And around the world.
But
that's
we
so
never
many
learn.
But Americans, it's not only like we're saying the British coming here, but it's Americans who've gone out. Vietnam and all over the world, is our family history. And
I think men learn. I think men learn the lessons, and the new generation comes along and thinks they're smarter than everybody else, and they want to try it anyway. And we just repeat it. If you don't study history, you repeat it.
Exactly. And here's the thing too, when you think about everyone serving today, that's going to be family history in the future. So it's like, get the records going now. Be aware. You know what I mean? That family history. I think isn't that part of it too, that when we're looking at, tracing our roots, we need to look at making sure that our roots can be found for future generations.
Yeah, I have a couple of things. My father was in the Navy, and he was involved in both Korea and World War II. And I have some memorabilia. I have a flag that he carried in his pocket, a U.S. flag, and then there are, I think, 6 languages that is written. If he's taken a prisoner of war, it's written in these 6 different languages to return him to the American consulate, and they would be given a reward to return him safely. And I didn't know that they had things like that. And I have from Korea some of the money. He brought some of the coin and the paper money. He gave it to me one day, and he said, I don't know what it's worth, but take it to the bank. You might get something out of it. I said, are you kidding? It's probably not. I mean, I'll keep it as a part of his history. That was, with some of the photographs and things that I have. And I do have the letters that he wrote to my mother while he was in Japan after the bombing at World War II. And it's priceless, and that's not public. No one has copies. I'm the only one that has that because they gave that to me, and I haven't even shared that with my siblings at this point. So a lot of people have it. It's there. As you do research, you don't know who gets what, when things are inherited or given by family members to one another. It's really fascinating to see that there's more information than that it's available. You just have to think, where would it be?
And everyone,
whether
again,
it's a government record or not.
Yeah, and personal, or it could be in a museum, it could be in a cemetery, it could be in a memorial site, it could be sitting in the battlefield, It
could be sitting in a national park.
It could be, The one thing that is brutal, when we look at what people went through is, in some of the wars, and I think about the mass graves of all these bodies just thrown in a pit, like in Rwanda. And it just when you realize that, and there's so many unmarked graves, and that's what I think is really just, in South Africa they would put rocks, like from the Zulu Wars, and they would put the rocks, there'd be whitewashed rocks into like a pyramid over where it's like unmarked or mass sites where they would just bury everybody in like a pit, and sometimes they would burn them, and everybody's got a different thing. And so I think that has got to be some of the hardest history to find is from those kinds of
Africa is
genocides and
difficult anyway.
Africa's hard. I know Paula J. I think he's really got
that's difficult.
a lot on his shoulders.
I didn't tell you what happened to him. He went back over there, and for 3 months I could not make contact with him. Over 3 months I was starting to get really, really worried. Well, he had got held up in one of those countries and couldn't get out, and was feared for his life. For his life. He finally got home, and now he just left this week to go back to Liberia, and I'm just like, oh, quit doing that.
I know.
It's scaring me,
Wow.
Africa is
different.
And
you really got to have your ear to the
in
ground.
This country, we've seen it during the wars with the Native Americans. They buried them in the Sioux Indians. I mean, I don't know. It's not new. They did it in,
yes.
Well, and also the
World War
record keeping was different.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
The Africans for a long time didn't keep records.
Well, yeah, it's passed down just in the Native American culture. It was oral, or
from mouth by mouth.
Yeah. Or you're looking at rock art, and when you think about that history, it's just, I think now so important to try and document as much as possible. It's trying to get that. And we were talking to Chase over the Kashan tribe in Yuma the other day, and he was talking about how the Kashan Nation is, they're trying to get the history, and they're trying to preserve the actual language, and it's difficult because the ancestors are arguing, not the ancestors, the elders are kind of like, no, this is that, and then everybody's remembering things a little different, and he's just like, just get the language out, get it out, because otherwise people aren't going to remember it. We need to document it and get it out there for people and for the youth. And so they're really, I think all the tribes are trying to work together, which wasn't the norm a long time ago, but they're trying to work together to preserve their history. And being moved around a lot didn't help, or chased down by the cavalry, that didn't help,
There are people who don't know what's available, like the Shoshone tribe here in the West, the Shoshone Indians. My friend James Tanner, who he's a co-author on this beginning military research book that we've done together, but he helped to preserve the Shoshone language dictionary, create and preserve it so that it's available. at some point in time, right now it's can't go get it, but he helped to preserve it and put it in a place where the Shoshone people have access to it. And at some point in time, I hope that all of us would, but people are losing their languages too because of all of the new technology. And
I was going to say, our Rosetta Stone is now emojis,
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, it's like, do we even, now we have, all these auto thingies and, half our words aren't always right now. And it's like, do we even know grammar anymore? Do we have to work through grammar programs so that we don't even think anymore? I don't know. I don't know if it's a good thing in progression or not. I haven't made my mind up on that, because if something is quicker and you can do something bigger, then it could be a better thing. But I don't know. I feel like we are losing.
I think we've lost a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think
you
lost
lose
a
the
lot.
concepts.
Yeah.
There
are words that
yeah.
You have a feeling you want to express and you have no words to express it.
Yeah.
Because we've lost so much language.
Yeah. It's the
we have
importance
a lot
of poets and writers in fiction. So important. So important. Holly, I want to remind everyone to go to familyhistoryexpos.com for your book and also the video classes that you have on military research. So weekly you do Ask the Pros Thursday evening or Friday morning, which is a great program. Everyone, again, tune in every third Friday. We do our family history show here on Big Blend Radio. You can go to bigblendradio.com and you'll see as every week we update the list, and you can listen live or on demand in all kinds of places, from YouTube to iTunes, TuneIn, Blog Talk Radio, you name it. But really, every third Friday, it's at 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern time. But I want to get into, you have two of these special retreats happening. You have a Family History Library Research Retreat, and one is April 8th through 13th, and one is November 18th through 23rd. And so this is teaching people how to use the library system, because how many people know how to use libraries anymore either? Just saying.
Right, exactly. What we do is we have people come into these retreats that from all over the country and we've had people come from China before.
Wow.
But they come in, they bring their own family research problem that they're working on, and we teach them how to use the catalog, how to access the records, working on their very own personal research. So by the end of that 6 days, they have found and accomplished a lot of work. Each morning we teach a class, a research class, and we'll focus on different topics. The one that we're doing in April, the focus is U.S. research, and we're using the census records. It's the backbone of research in the United States, and a lot of people use them, but they're missing so much. They look at it, they don't know what all those other, what everything means. And so we're going into the census, and we're going to teach them how to use the agricultural and the manufacturer census, the Native American census, the deaf census. There's and the deaf census. If you've got a family member who is deaf and they're in that, the amount of information is astounding. Everyone would hope that someone in their family showed up, because the amount of information you can find is astounding. But we'll be talking about all of those things. So we're going to take you through the census each day, a different aspect, in time frames from 1790 to 1890 and from 1900 to 1940. There are little markings that you see on the census that you just think somebody scribbled on there, but they actually mean things. And most people don't realize that. They just don't pay attention, and they look for a name and a place. They might look to see if they were if they owned land, and maybe if they were naturalized or an alien. They don't. A lot of people don't even know that those columns exist, that they can find out that their ancestor has applied to become a citizen. And we're going to go into that in great detail and help people But each day we work on their research, and whatever kind of records they need, that's what we're going to look for. But the classes we're going to teach for this April is really how to get deep into the records and let the clues lead you to another record source that will answer your question.
Excellent. And so this is something that people can go to in person, or they can do this. You're going to broadcast this online, right?
Right. The classes each morning at 8:30. We teach class in the library, but we also broadcast it. So if there are people out there who want to learn that class part, they can participate from home from their personal device or their computer, their cell phone or their tablet. And they can participate, and we allow chatting so they can ask questions. It's monitored, and questions that are valuable, we go ahead and pass that on. We only have a certain amount of time, so we can't answer every question. And some people ask questions that we know we're going to cover later in the presentation, so we don't answer those. But we do take time, and we answer, and we encourage people to ask questions. And so you can come physically, have the class, and then spend the day with us one-on-one helping you do research in the library. If you can't get to Salt Lake, you can still participate in the class, ask questions during the class time, and it's a great benefit. So we've really decided, we put so much effort into the classes that we prepare. It's a shame that only a few people that can physically get here can take advantage of it. So we've opened that up. That's one of the ways we love technology, because it allows us to serve more people. And then they have more questions.
Because it's global, family history
questions.
Is global, and that's great that you also have Ask the Pro, so it's something that can continue on. And also, you have August 5th through 10th is Let Your Light Shine 2019 International Family History Expo. That's where we started our monthly chats with you, was with that expo coming up last year. And, it was absolutely amazing, all the different countries and topics that were covered in that expo. And it's really cool. People, you can go in, and when Holly does an expo like this, it's like a virtual expo. You are walking to different booths online. You click on it. Sometimes you can talk to the people that are in the booth. You can leave them a message, hey, what about this and that? And so it's a really cool thing. Yeah, free stuff. Everybody loves free stuff.
They have free stuff. You can go in and find out what they're doing, and it's pretty fun. Last year was the first time we'd ever done an international, that type of a thing, with speakers from Norway and Spain, and they were all over the globe, Australia, and presenting. It was cool. It was really cool. And so we're going to do that again this year. We're going to pick different topics, different countries. So it'll be another amazing thing that we can learn about people from all over the world. And we're looking forward to Big Blend Radio participating with us again, and because you guys, your radio shows are international, they're global, and there's just a lot of really awesome things that we have to share with people. So we're looking forward to that.
It's going to be a lot of fun, and who knows where we're going to be. We're going to be doing our shows with you from all different locations this year and next year and the next, and that's just how we roll. It's fun. And I know there's going to be a lot of ties in there, and I do want to tell everybody our next Family History, Third Friday Family History Show with Holly, February 15th. We're going to be covering Arizona family history. We're going to be airing live from the historic Coronado Motor Hotel in Yuma, Arizona. That's our tour headquarters. And that's where we got to meet Holly and her husband the other day, which is very cool. And then also our March Family History Show with you, we're going to cover more on library research and the census, so people can get even more information, and to really give you kind of like a little trailer, a little preview of what the retreat is going to be like in April. So stay tuned for that. That, again, will be the third Friday in March. And lots of good stuff coming up for this year. So, Holly, it is always fun having you on the show. And everyone, again, FamilyHistoryExpos.com is the website to go to. And Holly also has a great newsletter, keeps you up to date, sends you articles and all kinds of different opportunities to learn more about researching your family history. And, of course, if you go to blendradioandtv.com, you'll see Holly's articles there. Also on nationalparktraveling.com, which really focuses on roots travel. And we want to thank all our listeners for joining us here on Big Blend Radio. Our next show is Sunday, January 20th. We're going to talk about cooking, vegetarian cooking. So how about that? Chef Ivan Flowers, Chef Jeremy Manley, and Ruth Milstein, the author of Cooking with Love, Ventures into the New Israeli Cuisine, will be on teaching us how to cook, because we need help. Not you guys, but we do. We need help.
Always another new recipe to learn.
Absolutely, absolutely. And these ones look absolutely delicious. Stuffed mushrooms, gnocchi, and how to make veggie burgers that are good. Meatloaf that you can make into a burger, or you can make into like meatballs and all kinds of things. So it's really good.
That sounds
really
delish.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we got music for you, Holly.
Awesome.
I know we've played this before for you, but I just think it really ties into family history and it ties into military history. And every time I hear this song, I feel it's like those who go off to serve, that this song was written for them. That's kind of how I feel. You know, it's like it's their song to remind us to not forget those who've passed on and served or in another country doing what they do, protecting our country and serving us. So everyone, here it is. It's Please Remember Me. It was written by artist Ted DeGrazia, based here in Tucson, Arizona. He's since passed. But they found his manuscripts, his music manuscripts, and recreated an album with his son Domingo DeGrazia and the Jazz Orchestra Band here in Tucson. And so you can go to degrazia.org for the album, which is also called Please Remember Me. So here it is. Thanks so much, Holly. You take care.
You too. Till next time. Bye-bye.
That's right.
Alrighty. Bye-bye. Remember